Well, it's my pleasure to introduce Jodi Jones. If her talk is as interesting as her biography, this should be good. She lives in a big green house that turns 100 years old this year. She loves and lives with her standard poodle, husband Steve, and boys Bridger and Julian. She is active in her community, organizing friends and neighbors around making their places more livable. She loves to travel and camp, hike, and bike with her family, and they are all avid national parks fans. She is a distance swimmer who completed a 12.5-mile expedition swim last August. In her spare time, she is an associate professor in the Department of Family Medicine at ETSU, where she practices as a clinical psychologist, teacher, and researcher. And we won't tell your department head what your priorities are. So, welcome, Jodi Jones.
Thank you so much. It's absolutely an honor to be asked to come and speak to you all this morning. And so, just so I don't do that thing, what am I shooting for time here? It's 5 till 11. 11:15.
25 minutes.
Okay. My kids are like, about 5 minutes? Is that good? They said you could join them in RE anytime. I took it as a compliment that they chose to stay, and so we'll see how much of a compliment it turns out to be in the long run. A couple of little opening readings. The first one by Russ Harris, who has written some popular books that describe a very interesting new evidence-based type of treatment called acceptance and commitment therapy. Acceptance and commitment therapy is kind of the new wave of cognitive behavioral therapy. It's a science-based intervention for people who are struggling, not just people who are struggling like in a big way, as we heard today from one of our joys and concerns, but people who struggle like we all struggle, right? So Russ Harris writes a lot about this type of treatment and what it means and how it works. And he says, the mind loves telling stories. In fact, it never stops. All day, every day, it tells you stories about what you should be doing with your life, what other people think of you, what will happen in the future, what went wrong in the past, and so on. It's like a radio that never stops broadcasting. And the second reading comes from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who wrote a book in the 90s called Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience. And he says, how we feel about ourselves, the joy we get from living, ultimately depend directly on how the mind filters and interprets everyday experiences. Whether we are happy depends on inner harmony, not on the controls we are able to exert over the great forces of the universe. Certainly, we should keep on learning how to master the external environment because our physical survival may depend on it. But such mastery is not going to add one jot to how good we as individuals feel or reduce the chaos of the world as we experience it. To do that, we must learn to achieve mastery over consciousness itself. I'm going to be pitting these two authors against one another. This is a sermon that the beginning part, I wrote about 15 years ago. And the end of the second half, which is the Russ Harris part, is an update that I wrote in the last few weeks. So it starts with a story. I used to swim with a fitness group whose coach wanted us in the water at 5:30 a.m. sharp. To those of us who languished in poolside lounge chairs, rubbing sleep out of our eyes, he clapped his hands and hollered, "Let's move, people. What do you think this is, the Holiday Inn?" The coach's name was Frank. He was a young law student, and so he wore pressed pants, a crisp white shirt, and a tie on the pool deck. At 5:30 a.m., Frank was wholly animated. He was on fire with energy and humor. He loved coaching us, and it showed. Nevertheless, it was a suffering to make it to those practices. The alarm clock jangling at 4:30 in the morning seemed too much to bear, and driving to practice in the still pitch black dark was an impossible agony. And then during the winter months, the most daunting task of all, a sprint from the clubhouse to an outdoor pool in just a bathing suit and flip-flops. Against the night sky, the lighted pool would glow an eerie kind of neon green, feeding its steam to the winter chill. And Frank's reward for all of this sacrifice was a 90-minute workout of additional torture and pain. Indeed, they were challenging, and at least once a week he would single me out to do a certain set that would absolutely push me to the edge of my ability. He would stand at the end of my lane, his fancy pants all cuffed up, and every time my ears were out of the water, he'd carry on in the manner of, "Come on, Jodi, you the woman." Sometimes we would complain. We would finish the easy warm-up, and Frank would tell us what we were doing for the main set, and it would sound totally brutal, and we'd balk. And then Frank would say, "You didn't get out of bed at 4:30 this morning to walk barefoot in the snow, to warm up and cool down. You came here for the main set. This set, my friends, is why you're here today." The first time he said this, I was stunned to discover that he was right. It seemed absurd, but why else was I here? Why was I doing this? The answer was twofold. First, I recognized that after one of Frank's workouts, I felt an incredible sense of accomplishment and esteem. Some mornings I had a particular achievement to gloat about. I had broken a personal record or for distance or for speed, but most mornings I just felt great about having surmounted the challenge of getting to the practice at all. Second, I realized that within workouts, even ones that hurt like heck, I would sometimes have an amazing experience. Reality would slip away. Graduate school successes and failures, relationships with friends and enemies, special gifts and money woes, all of this would become utterly forgotten. I was completely liberated from everything about myself, good and bad. I even lost track of time itself. The only thing that lived in my mind was the water and the wall, the pull and the kick, and the feel of my body straining to the task at hand. My energy and attention became a single beam of focus on the swim, and though it was challenging, I felt I had boundless energy, and in a strange way, it seemed effortless to engage the task. I felt in control and purposeful. I felt a kind of bliss. Have you ever had an experience like this? Perhaps it was an athletic activity like swimming, but it could have been during almost any activity, a hobby, a home improvement project, an intellectual pursuit, even at your job. Have you ever found yourself so engaged in a task, so focused on it, that you lost track of every other worldly concern? You could see the goal that you were working towards, and while you may have found the task challenging, you were somehow able to easily tap your own resources to accomplish it. Your response came almost automatically or reflexively, even though you had to exert incredible effort. When you finished, you couldn't believe how much time had passed. You felt a strong sense of satisfaction about what you had done. When have you experienced this? What were you doing? Anybody have anything that's coming to mind right away? Some people have to, what was that? Hiking, great example. Could be effortful, could be tough, and time slips away. Do you have one, Julian? What's yours? Camping? Okay.
When I was caring for my first husband when he had cancer, it was effortless for me.
Mm-hmm. just really focused, singular kind of activity, everything just slips away. In the back.
Computer programming.
Makes you unique. Makes you you. But it points to how diverse the experiences can be, the activities can be, but the experience is the same. It could be computer programming, it could be caring for someone, it could be hiking or athletic activities. Whatever it is, it's an activity that really stands out, distinct from all the other time in our lives when our mind is nagging at us. This optimal experience, these optimal experiences that we're describing, my swimming and your activities, are called flow. According to Dr. Mike Csikszentmihalyi, experiencing flow is experiencing true enjoyment. Csikszentmihalyi says, happiness does not depend on outside events, but how we interpret them. Happiness is, in fact, a condition that must be prepared for, cultivated and defended privately by each person. People who learn to control inner experience will be able to determine the quality of their lives. The author tells us that the way we do this is not by trying to chase down happiness, but by controlling our attention, learning to flow. Now, this little piece right here is really important, so I need you to think about this. In the late 80s, or maybe it was the 90s, there was an arcade game called Whack-A-Mole. Raise your hand if you've ever seen or heard of Whack-A-Mole. This is good. About, I would say 60% of us have seen or heard of this game called Whack-A-Mole. And if you haven't seen this game before, this is how you play it. You stand in front of this platform that has about a dozen holes or more holes in it. And these little robotic moles pop out of the holes randomly. And you have this giant rubber mallet, and your job is to whack these robotic moles on the head, and you get points for the more moles that you hit. And then as time goes by, the moles come up more frenetically as they can, and you're whacking away. And so this is how it works. So sometimes my life, and I bet yours, sort of feels like you're playing whack-a-mole all day, right? Like these moles are popping up from the outside, like bills to pay and books to read and vacations to plan and relation and this and that, and you're whacking. And then there's these moles inside too, your internal experiences, right? Did I say the right thing? What should I do now? Does this sweater match these pants? Am I happy with my life? Whack. And it's kind of like your attention is getting diverted again by all these stimuli in the environment and these thoughts in your head. And your consciousness is really splintered and fragmented in a way that makes you feel like you're not in control of where it's going to go next. People resonate with that. So your consciousness, your experience, your consciousness is kind of like whack-a-mole. In flow, the moles kind of go away. They slow down. They become less available to us. Our consciousness is emancipated from all of that stimulation, from both without and from within. You feel like you're kind of in a bubble almost. The experience of singularly focused attention is the essence of true enjoyment. In flow, your experience becomes harmony. This deep level of concentration that causes flow requires an unusually well-ordered consciousness. The result of this mental harmony and order is the sense that we are better integrated or more whole. Of course, I had experienced flow before Frank's 5:30 a.m. practices. I just didn't know it. Somehow when he said, "This is why you came today," it was a revelation to me. My new awareness of the experience called flow was a kind of epiphany. Happiness and living fully could be pursued through these flow experiences. And I knew I could get flow through swimming, but how else could I? I felt surely I could find the key to cultivating more. It's been a long time since that discovery, and I am still astounded that true enjoyment is found in taking a difficult task to hand. And that's not just true for me. In Csikszentmihalyi's studies, participants wearing pagers reported flow-like experiences most often when engaging in tasks that challenged their abilities. The research showed that flow occurs when a person has not only met some prior expectation, but has also gone beyond what she or he has been programmed to do and achieved something unexpected. It is characterized by forward movement, a sense of novelty and accomplishment. Afterwards, we know we've changed, that our self has grown, and in some respect, we have become more complex. That flow is found in challenge astounds me. Haven't we all been trained to think otherwise? What about all those advertisements for relaxing on the deck of a cruise ship, or sitting around in a backyard hot tub, or taking in a movie and having a tasty dinner in a restaurant? Aren't these surely pleasant activities the key to happiness? Aren't they? Perhaps or perhaps not. The hundreds of subjects examined by Csikszentmihalyi consistently reported that they experienced flow the least while watching TV. Perhaps we relax and experience pleasure while watching TV, hanging out with friends, or going out for a drink, but often in these activities our attention is controlled by external forces rather than by our own, and the result is not nearly as satisfying. Up off the couch and into bed, we remain unchallenged, unchanged. Research participants reported feeling passive, weak, dull, and dissatisfied in these kinds of activities. Nevertheless, it appears in our precious leisure time, most of us choose to use our minds as little as possible. Almost half of Americans' free time is spent in front of the television. And so the psychology of optimal experience a la Csikszentmihalyi says we should seek challenges, perhaps in adventurous hobbies, or our writing, or gardening, or if we are lucky, our vocation. But is the goal to seek flow in all things? How much of our lives can really be optimal? So 15 years ago when I wrote this thing, I kind of went on to say that I thought we should seek optimal living and optimal experience at all times. I've kind of changed my mind. This turnabout for me has come mostly from psychological studies of human language, both overt human language as well as the covert, right? That's the little voice in your head telling you things, the moles, right? And these studies have shown that the mind likes minding, okay? It's adapted to chatter at us all day long, and it cannot be shut off. External and internal experience for humans is the whack-a-mole game, those stupid animals popping up and down like they do. In flow, like I said, they slow down, they get quiet, they maybe seem to go away. But the rest of the time, when we are driving to work, getting kids ready for bed, running last-minute errands, waiting in line for the bank teller, the moles are popping up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. When we're anxious or angry or embarrassed, the moles go nuts. But even on a typical day, the moles are there. We've got thoughts and feelings, memories and sensations coming at us, coming. And it's just a matter of, do we pick up the mallet and start whacking? Last year at this time, I had set a personal goal to swim the 12.5 mile length of Watauga Lake, a beautiful reservoir in East Tennessee, with an entry point that's under 30 minutes from our home. By summertime, my husband and I were spending long weekend mornings on the lake, he on his paddleboard and me in the water alongside. By late August, when I accomplished the swim, we had achieved over 50 miles on the lake in total. Swimming for such long spans of time, and I'll just say 12.5 miles took me about 8.5 hours. Swimming for such long spans of time is hard, and not just on my body. Swimming does not afford much in the way of distraction to the senses. There's no music or something to look at, no way to really chit-chat with your neighbor, wave to people. You're kind of stuck, right? Your face is mostly looking at green water. And so your mind plays hardball. The moles are flying. Swimming so long challenges the meaning maker mind, telling me to swim to shore, stop and rest. The water's cold, the water's hot. I'm getting sunburned. My shoulder has a kink. My neck can't possibly take one more turn. I'm going to drown. My feet are going numb. I need to quit. Here it was, the ultimate challenge. And yet, it was rarely optimal. I was not always happy, and my mind was moles, moles, moles. Are you guys following me? So this is the critical point, right? On the one hand, we have Csikszentmihalyi telling us that we're supposed to seek these optimal experiences, and yet here I was pursuing something that was important to me, and it wasn't optimal. It was the ultimate challenge. I think we seek flow when we can. And the rest of the time, we keep our eyes on the prize. What do we want this one life to be about? We push toward that end in spite of the moles, their confusing, agonizing, and incessant pressure. Recent behavioral science shows the effectiveness of learning a kind of acceptance of the barrage of thoughts in our head, an openness to memories, sensations, thoughts, and feelings that press in on us at times. When we don't resist those thoughts, when we don't pick up the mallet and whack, we learn that we can take another stroke, a few more kicks, another breath, stroke again with all those moles on board. We can use our energy for the swim and leave the mole-whacking mallet on the floor. That 12.5-mile swim was a highly symbolic act for me, one that altered my self-story in positive ways. And the strength and energy of that act resonate through my days. And yet, while swimming, I did not always flow. I would venture to say I experienced flow less than I experienced the moles and their crazy popping. Mostly it was me staying put with my valued direction while my mind raged on, me and my moles, one stroke at a time. What are your valued directions? What are the themes that hold your self-story together? And more importantly, what are the acts that illustrate those values? We are all willing to flow, to have optimal experiences. But are we willing to stand beside that crazy whack-a-mole game while it's on full tilt and do that symbolic act which will resonate through our days? The author Russ Harris speaks of this kind of acceptance in his book, The Happiness Trap. And when I say acceptance, I mean stand beside that crazy whack-a-mole game while it's on full tilt, looking at the moles with a kind of a grin and shrug, staying with your valued path even when you're not feeling it. Harris says success in life comes from living your values. Perhaps you value love above all. Well, he says, the feeling of love comes and goes on a whim. You can't control it. But the action of love is something that you can do regardless of how you're feeling. For me today, seeking the extraordinary in challenges isn't just about finding flow. Rather, it invites me to open myself up to difficult experiences and to practice staying curious about them. The advantages are twofold. First, hidden inside these challenges are great exhilaration and the sense of a life fully lived, adding something meaningful to my self-story and feeling that resonate through my days. But second, volunteering for these challenges has helped me practice for challenges in the day-to-day. It prepares me to stay constant in my valued direction amidst the crazy popping moles of life, the friendships that are struggling, the high-stakes presentations at work, the bad news about health or finances. The challenges of day-to-day life are rife with opportunities to be open and curious. The moles might cause us to lose sleep with worry, trying to run away, and trying to solve it all. It is not easy to put down the mallet. But putting down the mallet comes first. Once you stop looking to whack, you can start looking around. Hands free, you can start to explore the world as it presents in this moment, moles popping, but so much more. And since you are not diverting your energy toward whacking, you can put it toward what matters to you the most. You can stay on your path. Russ Harris says, when you go through life guided by your values, not only do you gain a sense of vitality and joyfulness, but you also experience that life can be rich, full, and meaningful even when bad things happen. Rich, full, and meaningful may not be optimal, but it's probably true that it sets the stage. By choosing a life guided by values, we allow ourselves a kind of synchrony with our goals and comfort with the moles that can tune us toward flow. And so we go.